a certain pace, like 1, 2, 3, right? Obviously, you know how to fucking count. This at first, most of you are going to suck really fucking hard at it. Yeah, that's a perfectly normal thing for a human brain to think of in this scenario, and it's just going to go away like every other thought I've ever thought in my life, and I don't need to do anything about it. Like, I kind of know that I'm full of shit for a second there. Guys, it's Matt. I want to talk a little bit about trader psychology today. And hopefully, by the end of the video, I'll convince you that if you're not already working on your own mind in some way, you are likely missing out on some profits in a roundabout way. So, um, we're going to cover just a couple of helpful techniques, psychology stuff that I think is good for traders. The first will be a simple, just deep breathing exercise and a little bit of maybe like heart rate monitoring there, but also then mindfulness and meditation. We'll talk a little bit about that and what that really means and how that might be helpful. And then also something called leaves on a stream, which is something called diffusion. It comes from a type of therapy called ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy. But it's kind of a more specific practice that you can do to try to kind of get in touch with your own mind and how it works. We'll talk more about it. This is by no means an exhaustive list, guys. It's just a few things that I think would be a good kind of dip your toe into the water with psychology for trading. So, what do I mean by simple deep breathing? So first, just literally breathe in, taking as long as you can. So you're trying to slow your breathing down and really take deep breaths. So as much air as you can fit into your lungs and fill them as slowly as possible. Not maybe not as slowly as possible, but really slow. And you can count that, right? Like you can breathe in and count pace, like 1, 2, 3, right? Obviously, you know how to fucking count. I don't know why. I don't know why I felt the need to to exemplify that. Yeah. So you count. You got 1,000, whatever you want to do, right? You count in, try to keep a steady pace, and then breathe out. Count it again. So you're counting your out breath. Again, slowing that down for as long as you can. And the reason it's important to try to keep a steady pace is that each time you do, if you do another inhale and then exhale, you want to try to make them a little bit longer each time. So just the idea here is if you can slow your breath rate down, then sometimes that can also help heart rate slow down. And if you're in a situation in trading where you kind of kicked into, it's probably not fight or flight because things don't hopefully get that bad in your trading. You know, it's not like having a gun to your head, but if you get to a place where you're a little more excited than you need to be, maybe a trade has gone against you and you're starting to feel like, oh, I'm getting to like the tilt place, right, where I start revenge trading and doing stupid things. Um, but if you can feel that your heart rate is elevated and you don't want it to be, then you can use this technique just to kind of take a couple breaths, and it can be as simple as 2 or 3 inhales, 2 or 3 exhales, right? And then you're good to go, and you kind of just have a little reset. So won't get into like the whole hypothesis behind it, and there's some stuff with like your nervous system and it upregulating or downregulating and all that kind of stuff. Probably not the proper terminology, but you get the gist, right? Um, okay, so mindfulness or meditation. So there are tons of options here, guys. I mean, especially the past 5, 10 years, this has really blown up and sort of become an industry all on its own. I enjoy using the Waking Up app from a guy named Sam Harris, who is an author and podcaster. He's got a PhD in I think neurobiology, and he's also been meditating for I don't know 30 or 40 years or something, and has studied with people all over the world. So he comes at the stuff from a pretty cool angle, and the app itself is just I don't get paid anything for promoting the app or anything. In fact, I pay him to use the app. So I just really like it. I think it's one of the best ones out there from what I've seen. Um, so mindfulness is basically just practicing being aware of what you're experiencing right now. right? So if you think about our brains and what they normally do, if you pay attention to it, our brains will wander off and think about all kinds of things about, that trade we missed yesterday, or the guy who cut us off in traffic earlier today, or what might happen tomorrow at the doctor's appointment, or whatever, right? Our brains will constantly be thinking about things that are happening at other points in our life. So mindfulness really is just focusing on what you're experiencing and what's being kind of brought into your awareness right now. So, whether it's the sensation of the chair you're sitting in and where you feel that chair in your body meeting, or it's the smells that you smell or the sounds that you hear. Are there birds outside? Is there a jet flying overhead? Is your dog barking? Can you hear the laptop fan running? Or uh, are you listening to my dumb voice right now? All that kind of stuff. So, is just being aware of what's going on. And you can do this anywhere. You can do it sitting quietly with your eyes closed. You can do it while you're walking around in your neighborhood. You can just decide to pay attention to what you're experiencing right now. Um, and so meditation can be a lot of times meditation and mindfulness are mixed, right? They're sort of the same thing, although I think of a meditation as more of a deliberate practice of it. And so you can do meditation self-paced or guided, like something like an app, like the Waking app will guide you through meditations. Um, and it basically, to me, it's just you take some time and you focus on thinking about a certain subject, which is really, if you look up the definition of meditation, it doesn't talk about a monk sitting cross-legged on a cushion, right? It's about just thinking deeply on a topic. Uh, so anyway, that's meditation. I think it can be helpful. It's another one of those things where you can start to really identify how your mind is working. Actually, before I go to that slide of leaves on a stream, more thing about mindfulness meditation is, when you try this at first, most of you are going to suck really fucking hard at it. And that is actually the realization you should be having, right? Like, wow, I think my brain is good at staying in the moment and focusing on what's in front of me. But really, when I try to make it do that, I notice that within seconds, it is off and wandering and thinking about something entirely different. And that's one of the benefits, I would say, of having a guided meditation is is that because someone's guiding you and telling you what to think about and sort of cueing you and reminding you along the way, your brain is going to wander. And then hopefully, when that person starts talking again, that kind of pulls your brain back into the focus and you get back into what you're supposed to be thinking about. So anyway, that's I think early on in any kind of mindfulness meditation practice or self-awareness or introspection, that's really the realization that you should come to, is like, wow, my brain is not nearly as under my control as I thought. Like my thoughts aren't. We'll talk about leaves on a stream here in a second. So um, you can find guided leaves on a stream sessions on the tubes. They're out there on the internet. So you can just on YouTube, there's a couple of them at least, right? And they're good. And you should maybe try those. So it's a nice, it's a way of practicing diffusing from your thoughts. So in other words, you can notice a thought exists without judging it and without acting on it, and realize that that thought, just like all of the other thoughts you've had in your life, will just go away on its own. So the leaves on a street thing is sort of like a mental picture exercise. This stuff really resonates with some people, and it doesn't make a damn bit of sense to other people. So I mean, take what you want from it, right? Like, you can roll your eyes, or you can be like, "Holy shit, this is going to be life changing." So uh, basically, you imagine leaves floating down a stream and your thoughts are on the leaves. So you're sitting in front of a stream, right? And the flow is coming, let's say, from one direction to another. It's kind of flowing by you, and there's leaves falling from the trees, and those leaves are riding the stream down. And so what you would do is, you see a leaf coming into your view, you take your thought and put it on that leaf, and then you just kind of watch it float by, and then eventually it goes out of your view in the other direction. And that's similar to what thoughts do if you really pay attention to them. They kind of just bubble up out of nowhere, and it's like, oh shit, I'm thinking about this right now. Why the hell am I thinking about that, right? And then after a minute or a couple seconds, or depends on your brain and what kind of mood you're in, you're thinking about something completely different. And sometimes you can't even remember, like, what the hell is the thing I was just thinking about? I go for a lot of walks, and this happens to me literally all the time. I walk my dog every day, and I'll be thinking about shit, and I'll be like, "Yeah, this is I go fucking thinking about this. This is awesome. Like, get a really good idea." And then, literally, like 2 seconds later, I'll be like, "Wait, I wanted to remember what I was thinking about. What was it?" And you kind of realize that you're not really that in control of which thoughts bubble up and how long they stick around for, and how long, or how quickly you forget them when they're gone. You can, once you're aware of it, you can start to modify it a little bit better. But I think most people are under the impression that they're just walking around in complete control of their thoughts all the time. And if that's what you think, you just haven't been fucking paying attention. Sorry. Uh, so anyway, Leaves on a Stream is just a mental exercise to kind of be able to visualize that. And it helps some people recognize what diffusion means. So the really important part is that you're recognizing the thought, and you're not judging it, and you're definitely not acting on it. In trading, this could look like, if you're getting FOMO, or you're starting to revenge trade, right? You can recognize those impulses, those thoughts. You can recognize the fact that your brain is like, oh my God, this thing is going to run away without us. We're going to miss out on all this money. And you can recognize that and go, yeah, that's a perfectly normal thing for a human brain to think of in this scenario, and it's just going to go away like every other thought I've ever thought in my life. And I don't need to do anything about it. I can just watch it happen, feel that feeling. Just sometimes it helps. I should put this on the slide. Sometimes it helps with a feeling that you kind of just dig into it a little deeper. Like, okay, what does FOMO feel like to me when I get that feeling, that sense of like, oh, I got to get in this thing, even though it's way past your entry, right? Your ideal entry is gone. It's 30 cents ago, and now you're thinking, oh shit, I'm late. What does that feel like? Where do you feel it? Do you feel it in your chest? Do you feel it in your stomach? Um, does your hand start to shake? Like, you can kind of identify physical symptoms, or at least what seem to be physical symptoms of having that feeling. And sometimes just zoning in and kind of digging down into that helps it dissipate. So anyway, that was something. I just went off on a tangent there, but uh, look up Leaves on a Stream. You might find it interesting, and if not, okay, that's that's fine too. Uh, I did put this slide up here. Basically, just general investigation of yourself, or introspection. So, okay, here's the deal with trading, guys. At least in my experience and what I've seen from other people, right? Is like a very small part of trading is finding a system that works. In fact, honestly, there's some really good ones out there that are super popular, have been around for like fucking decades, right? And they just work. They continue to work year after year, decade after decade. And maybe you have to modify things a little bit. You have to learn a little bit more about, markets. And obviously, the markets have changed with computer trading now versus, you used to have to call your broker and wait 3 days or whatever before you got into a stock. I mean, there's differences, but the general basics are the same, and they're out there. It's not a very hard thing to do, is to find a winning system. I say that with a fingers crossed a little bit, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, I kind of know that I'm full of shit for a second there, because sometimes it can be a little difficult to find a trading system. But what I'm saying is, it's not the end part, because you can find the system and then realize that you don't have the capability to actually follow that system because of your lack of emotional control. There are some people that are going to disagree with me. I can think of, is it iMan Trading, who I think, if I remember his videos correctly, thinks trader psych is mostly full of shit. Like that trader psychology is just bullshit. I think he thinks that, but I could be misrepresenting his position. So if I am, forgive me. But I know there's others out there who just think like trader psychology is bullshit. You just, you get a good system and it doesn't matter. And look, there are interactions with your system and your psychology. They're not separable. They are inseparable, right? They are constantly joined because, as I said in a video, I don't know, maybe a month ago, if your risk is too big, that's going to affect your ability to follow the plan because your psychology is going to be out of whack, right? Your emotional control is not going to be in your favor because your risk is too big and you're just not willing to take those losses, right? And sometimes in a system, you have to be willing to take a certain amount of risk, certain amount of losses. You've got to accept those. And if you can't, then you're going to be getting out of trades earlier than you should be. And then that's not the same system anymore, right? So, uh, where was I going with all that? So, a big part of whether you can be successful as a trader or not is whether you know yourself well enough to know whether you can follow a certain system or not, or whether you can become better at knowing yourself so that you can then follow the system, right? Maybe at first, I'll use myself as an example. Uh, I right now I'm following a my system, and I can't imagine this is going to change because it's working really well. My system is a lower win rate, high profit loss ratio system, right? My wins are small, my wins are big, my losses are small. I don't win a large percentage of the time. I'm like 50% or less. This past week it was 33%, and I was positive for the week, right? I was up 2.5 R, 2.7 R, something like that. Uh, but so it involves taking a lot of little losses, which can really bother some people, right? And if you don't have good awareness, self-awareness, a good understanding of how your brain is functioning, then you might not be able to follow that system right, right? Then you start I don't know, you start taking smaller wins so that they don't turn into losses, right? You start trimming your position a little too early, or just, if it goes in your favor a little bit and then it starts to turn around, you get nervous really quickly, you don't want to take a loss, and you cut it. And it turns out, you know what, that was going to turn around. It was going to dip below your entry a little bit, and then it was going to skyrocket to like a 3R trade. And you just completely missed that trade because you were not emotionally capable of handling the idea that you might take a loss on that trade, right? And so that, yeah, that's all introspection, right? So you've got that first part of like, okay, find a winning system, and then you've got all of yourself that has to be able to follow that system. Now, look, if you're good at coding and you can code a computer to do the entries and the exits, and then you're taking yourself out of the equation, and yeah, okay, you're just your computer is going to follow that system to the letter, right? And I know some guys that do that, and they're good coders, and good for them. That's awesome. But I'm not, so I have to work on me. So basically, if you're not doing some sort of investigation of yourself, just paying attention to how you're reacting to things. And this is probably good for life too, not just for trading, but how you're reacting to things, uh, and how your brain is working and what kind of things you're thinking about on a regular basis, and whether or not you think that those things are the right things to be thinking about, that they're good, or that they're taking you closer to your goals, or are they taking you farther away from your goals. Um, those are things to be thinking about a lot. And so I feel like if you're not doing some sort of self-investigation, introspection, you're just missing out, guys. So that's my number one recommendation. I really hope that some of you will take that seriously and start doing the work. And I'll have more videos as we go along about different ideas, other stuff you can do, and how journaling fits into all of this, and all kinds of stuff, right? But these are just a few that I wanted to go over today. So anyway, let's get to practice. So with all of these things that we listed today, practice, it's the most important part of it. What I mean by practicing, and this is similar to like, I don't know, like shooting free throws at basketball practice, right? Like you do that at practice so that by the time you get to it in the game, you've done it 1,000 times already or more, right? And then your skills are honed. You know that you can do exactly what you need to do while you're there, and it just goes a lot easier from there, right? So That's the same with either deep breathing or mindfulness or the leaves on a stream thing. Like you practice it on a regular basis, scheduled, hopefully, if possible, right? Like every day for 5 minutes, I practice deep breathing or I practice meditation or whatever. And the more you practice it, two things are going to happen. One, the better you're going to get at it, right? Because everybody sucks at meditation at first. Uh, so the more you practice, the better you get at it. And two, the more you practice it, the more it stays top of mind and you'll be able to fall back on it when you need it, right? So one of the tough things about stress management skills or any of the things we talked about today in general are the times when you need to think of it the most, when you wish your brain would remember that this is a thing that we want to do. Those are the times that you're not likely to think about those kind of things, right? Like, so think about this. You're in a trade, it's going against you, you're watching the numbers rack up, you're going to take the literally the biggest loss you've ever taken, and it's possibly going to wipe out your account, right? Let's say this is a scenario. You're going to be in such a panic mode that the last thing your brain is going to think right then is like, oh, maybe we should do some deep breathing right now, brah. Like, no, your brain is not likely to think of that unless you've been practicing that a lot, and then it's more top of mind and it's more likely to bubble up where you're like, hey man, like all that introspection I've been doing, here I am. What the hell's going on in my brain right now? I don't like what's going on. Let's do some deep breathing, try to get me to a place where I'm thinking a little bit more clearly and things are making sense, and then I'll react to this, right? Um, so that's why practice is important. It's you'll be better at it, and you're more likely to pull it up when it's necessary. Um, so just a quick review. Uh, we went over deep breathing. We went over mindfulness meditation. Went over leaves of stream. I talked about why introspection is important and why practice is the most important part. So I don't care if you don't do any of the specific scenarios or specific techniques that we talked about today. But some sort of practice of introspection on a regular basis is important. Make it a part of your day. Start small, start with 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you have available, and just make it a part of your daily routine. And it'll grow from there. And you'll know where to take it from there. Once you start paying attention to what's going on up here, you'll figure out, all right, this is probably the next step that I need. And if you can't figure it out, drop a comment and I'll see if I can give you some advice on it sounds like you might need this or that, or check out this thing, right? Feel free to do that, guys. This is a area of interest of mine, and so I've studied a lot about it. But anyway, keep up the good work, and we'll see you guys soon for another market recap and some more good psych stuff. Adios.